America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Thursday, but I try to give a show on relationship advice and just kind of relationships in general on Monday. And this is kind of a special Memorial Day Monday. Hello. Hope you enjoy the show. And today we're going to talk about the fact that there are 3 black senators. There are 3 men, and they're all single. And you could say, well, that's just a sample size. It's a small sample size. It doesn't say anything about what black male identity means and what senator identity means. It's just a small sample size. But then you had the other black senator who was elected, and that was Barack Obama. And he was this close to getting divorced. Remember, back in 2000 when he lost to Bobby Rush for those congressional seats, Michelle Obama, drew up papers. And since, anywhere from 60 to 75% of divorces are initiated by women, and then if they're college educated, that number even goes even higher. You can't. There might be a story here, and I don't think it's an accident that the 3 black senators are single men, right? Because the senator is like the highest carat of elected office in the land. I don't think there should be a Senate necessarily, but that's fodder for another show. But as it stands, by the time you're a senator, it's a very expensive race. And if you lose, you get nothing. And if you win, you got to be a senator, but you probably won't win because it's a very expensive race and you have to raise a lot of money for it. And it's hard. It's a hard race that unless you care about politics isn't going to be fulfilling. Now, Warnock's wife left him like 5 minutes after he filed the papers, right? So he was married. It was what he was. He was the head pastor of Ebenezer Baptist. And then he filed his papers. And I want to say less than 2 weeks later, he filed his Senate papers. And less than 2 weeks later, his wife filed his divorce papers, right? Because, it wasn't it was a Democratic senator running statewide in Georgia. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that he was going to win. I think, honestly, these women don't want to be around losers, right? So that's why Michelle Obama already almost left Barack when Barack lost to Bobby Rush in 2000. And she got papers drawn up. Everyone knows it's public record. You can Google it. And why apparently Tim Scott was in a serious relationship when he was in his 40s, and his serious relationship didn't make it past his congressional run. He lost, his woman broke up with him during his congressional run. Now, I think if you win, the women stay with you. Or if they get you while you're winning, it's fine. But, they don't want to go through the risk. And there are a few things going on. Now, this is one of those things where I'm going to get called misogynist and all these words. And, that may or may not be true. My sound is clipping. My sound isn't doing what it ought to. Is my sound okay? Tell me in the chat. All right. But all right, so I'm just going to keep talking. And if my sound isn't doing what it ought to, just tell me in the chat. So Michelle, let's stop pretending that Michelle cares about politics. Like Hillary Clinton might actually care about political. My sound is choppy. All right, let's see what I can do during the break, and maybe I'll come back and have it fixed. I'll do the opening.
To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I'll paint the White House black and it can feature in your front. To the beat, y'all.
All right, so maybe I fixed it, maybe I didn't, but it should work moderately well now. All right, so let's talk about, Michelle was halfway out. Barack loses one more race. Michelle finds a reason why he was abusive and she leaves, right? So that's just going to happen, and we need to just be honest about that. Let's stop pretending that Michelle has this huge political vision that she wants to profit. No, she wanted to be like a picture of black civil excellence, and that was Barack losing these elections wasn't going to help her sense of who she ought to be. he won, so they're together. But if he loses, it is what it is. So Michelle, so Tim Scott was dating a woman, and Tim Scott came on as a Republican. When he was younger, apparently, he used to talk about how he was a virgin and was waiting for sex. Now he's in his 50s, doesn't talk like that anymore, but he's still not married. And he used to talk about wanting 6 kids. Maybe he'll still get to 6 kids, but he's in his 50s. So that's going to be a hard conversation. And then Cory Booker, people talk about Cory Booker might be gay. I don't know. I just know that it's kind of hard for these guys to find women. And only 10%, around 10, I ran the numbers, about 10. For some people, it's hard to find out if they're married, but only about 10% of the senators are not married. Some of the women are interested. Some of them are like Elizabeth Warren, who kind of sucked the life out of her first husband and then got a whole lot of it. So Elizabeth Warren was like with this guy, the guy helped her through school and all that stuff with this engineer. And then she divorced him after she got her law degree. And then 2 years later, she's married to a whole law professor. So, there's that. And yeah, so Elizabeth Warren, so she's not the greatest in my opinion. But the other guys, I have to wonder, is there something kind of anti-black family about the office of the Senate? Now, the Senate is the most aristocratic branch. And like I said, I think it should be abolished for a different reason, for lots of reasons. But I find it interesting that I find it interesting that black men who become senators have a hard time maintaining their wives. And I do think, one, it's a class issue because we're talking about an elite class of black men. And they risk it all by trying to become a senator. You get nothing. There are only so many elite black men, and then they risk it all. You get nothing, and all you spend a year busting your butt, sucking up and squeezing money out of people. And if you lose, you get nothing. And we don't have the quality of generational wealth that these guys will attract women who don't want that to be their life. So I think that's what it ultimately comes down to, that the quality of women these guys are talking to don't want to deal with someone who might lose. Like Ebony K. Williams is not going to want you to run for Senate. She's going to want you to keep running your construction company and making her money and keeping up her lifestyle, not run for Senate and lose and get nothing. And then she's attached to a loser. That's not on her level, what she considers to be her level. So I think there's a lot of that going on. And there's a way in which we're political and there's a way in which we're not political. You could say what you want about Kamala Harris and how she's awesome and how she's, black girl magic and all that stuff. She does have she succeeded in becoming a black senator and keeping and not divorcing her family. But it's not like she has some sort of deep political vision that she's committed to. It's not as if she believes in this without the shine. She's into politics because of the ego, right? There's no political project. What a Kamala Harris Democrat looks like is just someone who likes winning and being a Democrat. So, yeah, she used Willie Brown. Yeah, Kamala Harris is funny because when I first knew her, I was in Northern California at the time. I just knew her as Willie Brown's girlfriend who he put on. And now I'm supposed to pretend like that's not who she was. So anyway, I think this wouldn't be an issue if, I'll say it, you're going to get me and I'm probably going to lose. I don't think this would be an issue if black women were, as a culture, political in terms of, a political project, so they wouldn't punish black men for being political. And I'll say that. And I'll say that. And that's what it is. Because if you're a Michelle Obama, if you worked hard and you're like, Ebony K. Williams, and you consider yourself, the high class, black woman, you don't want a guy who could lose in anything. You want a guy who's going to keep you to the standard of living to which you would like to become accustomed, to which you've aspired to arrive at. Not a guy who's going to, risk it all on something as generically important as politics. It's not like you're committed. It's not like these Spelman grads are committed, like have a committed political vision. No, they're in it for the shine, right? So, and I'm going to get in trouble for Stacey Abrams, being a Spelman grad. But you just have to understand that, like, these women aren't politically committed as something that's not a game, as something that's not a personal come up. And when you're running for senator, you're not necessarily looking for a personal come up. You can get a personal come up a different way. You can get money a different way. Right? And so that was, I think that's operating. So the office of senator, just because there's a high risk and the only reward is political power in terms of just like being able to, not necessarily money, but a quality of, like, if you have political vision, they don't want that life. They don't want to risk it all. They'd rather be with a guy who is about money and about lifestyle and about shine. Right? And so Warnock's wife left him. They're all going to cry abuse, so it doesn't really matter. So maybe he ran over her foot in a car. But, like, it's not, if you want to hit somebody with a car, you hit them with a car. So you might have just, like, backed out too fast and, like, was just like, leave me alone and go. So I don't know. So let's, and I think it's a class issue. It's a class issue because by the time you're a senator, you're of a certain class, and I don't think black women of that class are actually politically committed to, like, a vision so much that they want the guy that they expect to be the breadwinner to risk it all, risk all of their money and all of that, and spend all of that time on the road just to further a political vision. So if you're going to be a politically minded black guy, you need to find a politically minded woman, is what I'm saying. Like a real politically minded woman, not one who thinks of the office as a come up, but actually someone who actually believes in a political vision, in your political vision. Right? Because that's the choice they're going to have to make. And you'll end up with a Warnock wife. You'll end up with, so you need to find someone who's actually committed to the struggle first, and maybe the struggle first and you second, which is fine, because if you're committed to the struggle and they're committed to the struggle and you're struggling, they're not gonna bounce because, like, you risk for the struggle because they're in it for the struggle. So good luck finding that woman, but that's the kind of that's what you're going to need if you don't want to get divorced. A lot of my shows are going to be about how not to get divorced, because I think that men, especially black men, need to think constantly about how to date, marry, and have sex in a way that doesn't get them divorced, because that is like a real fear, and women control divorce. Women control sex and divorce, and men control marriage to an extent, right? So if you think about, like, well, I just want to have sex, that is a different way of, like, approaching your relationships with women than, like, I just want to marry someone who, no matter what I do, isn't going to divorce me, even if they say they're not going to divorce it, like, they'll still divorce you, like, so you need to actually strategize to think through what it's like to marry someone who's not going to divorce you. You don't want to end up like Warnock. You don't want to actually, and even if even a more cynical version, you don't want to be so committed. You don't want to be so committed to the struggle that like your wife resents the struggle, so she divorces you because the struggle doesn't pay as well as it should. Right? So I think that's what Warnock ran into. I think that's why the single black senators are a thing. They can't find women who are actually as politically committed and are willing to risk all of their like the perks of being quasi-elite, risk all of those perks just for like, a little bit more political power to actually put forth a political vision, right? So you need to find someone who is politically committed so that they won't leave you. And let's not, I talk a lot of crap about Michelle Obama because I'm not a big fan of her, but let's not pretend that Michelle Obama has some so deep political vision. She doesn't. She doesn't care about it. She liked being first lady because it's cool for everyone to kiss your butt, but she's not like, she doesn't care about policy, right? And if Barack started caring more about policy than, securing her bag, then Michelle would have dropped him. Right? No Coretta Scott Kings available today. That's possible. But someone says a DNA test or a prenup. Prenup won't save you from your kids. Right? So divorce screws you even with a prenup. This is the idea that prenups will protect you from like a bad spouse is ridiculous because they might protect some of your antecedent property, but how much antecedent property do you have before marriage anyway? But they're not going to protect you from your spouse taking your kids. And you can't raise a kid for half-time. You can't really, I don't want to raise a kid half-time because I don't trust anybody else to raise my kids. I need to see my kids every day. So, so a prenup's not going to save you from someone who's going to screw up your kid. I don't know if Coretta Scott King is a unicorn. But you need to find someone like that. And what you need to do is find someone who's not a gold digger, because a political life or life of black uplift is going to be about is going to be about risk. All right, like I don't know, like a lot of my people who do good ADOS work, for example, Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell. I don't know if Antonio's got a partner. Or if would he still do this work if he did? I don't know. I'm not like, that's his business, but I'll tell you, I got 3 kids and a family. But I think I'm kind of unique. A lot of people in my position are divorced and don't see their kids. So that just kind of is what it is. So thank you. Go ahead. If you have ideas about why these 3 senators, the 3 black male senators, are all single, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'm curious to see your impression. I think that black marriage isn't built for risk, and that doesn't get better as the class goes up. And running for Senate is a high class political office, and black spouses don't want their spouse to risk for something as ambiguous as the greater good or a better political project. They'd rather them just keep making money. So there's that. Now I think once they win, it'll be pretty easy. But then once you win, you're kind of jaded. I suspect all 3 of these guys are pretty jaded with respect to women because I don't know, they've had to deal with a lot of them who were not with them when they were poor. So, or like Warnock bounced as soon as he filed his Senate paperwork. Anyway, thank you for your time. I will see you on Thursday talking about something different. I was going to talk about Ike and Tina because people don't know how bad Ike's life was. Ike got it bad, man. Ike's life was not great, and and both Tina and Ike are both lived horrible, had horrible upbringings, and they were both horrible together to each other. And people talk about it as some sort of misogyny, but it's not. It's just that they were living poor black, descendant of slaves' lifestyles, and somehow it got put into a spotlight, and now we need to, and in order to make it palatable, we needed to make it some sort of, they needed a feminist, a feminist lens in which to think Ike is bad and Tina's a victim, as opposed to like they were just both bad and they were bad to each other. Kind of like Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde's like a horrible person, but like for very predictable reasons, but we have to pretend that she's not a monster. Yeah. Anyway, by the way, if I don't get around to that Ike and Tina video, the rape scene from What's Love Got to Do with It, the Angela Bassett movie, Hollywood put it in. Ike's daughter told the truth. Like, Hollywood put that in. It didn't happen. They were just awful to each other. And you know what? A lot of people who get, a lot of the people who don't understand Ike and Tina, they probably thought that Bobby Brown was the bad influence on Whitney, when it turns out they were just kind of both a little bit degraded and they were just doing bad together, right? So that was an eye-opening moment for Black America when they realized that Whitney is just as bad as Bobby. It'll be another eye-opening moment when we find out that Tina was just as bad as Ike, and Ike had it bad, and Tina had it bad. They both came from awful, awful families in very predictable ways, just with the legacy degradations of being American descendants of slaves. All right, thank you for your time, and if you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. Look, I don't get paid a lot of money in order to give you the quality of insight that I try to do twice a week here, and you're not going to get it anywhere else. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. All right, peace.